Thanks. I wanted to take some time out today and address the public about the Tulsa Police Department and just some of the things that's going on with the department, as well as give an update on what's going on with our crime. A lot of things have been going on within the realm of the media, and some things get glossed over. And I wanted to bring your attention to a few matters that that directly affect us. And that first point is that I don't think most people understand this or know this, but assaults on Tulsa police officers are up more than 40% from this time last year. We are reporting 95 officers that have been assaulted year to date, as opposed to 62 last year. The Tulsa Police Department has also experienced an increase in violence towards officers wearing a uniform. Most of these violent assaults garner very little attention from the public. But they are something that we deal with on a daily basis and is real to us. Homicides within Tulsa are up between 14% and 19%, depending on how you look at the data. There's this phenomenon that appears to be occurring in Tulsa and across our nation, which has not yet before been seen. Perhaps it's the pandemic, maybe, that's knocked everything off kilter. But there are certain things that we on the Tulsa Police Department are doing in an attempt to get a grasp on the violent crime that is occurring within Tulsa. The crime gun unit and our organized gang unit have seized more than 241 firearms. 216 of those firearms were seized specifically from that unit. These firearms are guns that are in possessions of criminals, guns in possession of people who should not have them. We've had more than 27 arrests that are a direct result of information that we've derived from what's called Crime Gun Intelligence Center. That is an initiative that we are involved in with our federal partners. Domestic violence remains a serious crime in Tulsa, and one that we investigate, and remains the most dangerous crime that an officer goes to on a call on a routine basis. To date, we have responded to more than 12,500 calls. Domestics also occur that involve strangulation. We know that strangulation in and of itself means the propensity for violence, or the propensity for the victim to die at the hands of that suspect are higher. To date, we have had 446 domestic violence calls involving strangulation. I want to pivot also to what we've done on the police department in the first 6 months that I've been here as the chief. One of the first things that we did was we created a communications unit to better address the public. This has allowed us to increase our focus on social media, and also allows for things that you don't see, like our internal messaging within the police department has increased. Most recently, we've developed a media specialist position for the communications unit. We're currently seeking applicants for that now. We believe that adding a person that is from the media industry will allow us better media access and allow you, the citizens, better access to us on the police department. And it also provides knowledgeable insight into the media industry. We created a community engagement unit, not only to address our community outreach, but also to develop a strategic plan and training curriculum for the Tulsa Police Department. We've made a focused effort on community outreach, and we hope that focused effort yields, as the years to come, to help us with our recruiting and also to help us with our long-term support from the community. Several weeks ago, I assigned a civilian executive to the chief's office, and that person was put in place to audit our use of force data and to begin developing new processes regarding that. We just went through our annual shift change, and with that, we have redeployed supervisors. We've addressed the supervisor deficiency that's part of the uniformed operations. What we've done is we have increased supervisor accountability and officer accountability by adding more supervisors to the patrol divisions. We believe that this is going to make for a safer call response for our patrol officers and hopefully garner better customer service support to our citizens. We also immediately began focusing on officer accountability. We've done that through internal affairs investigations. We believe that that leads to the legitimacy of our organization, and also we believe that is better customer service as well. We've rebranded our police department with a new vehicle. This vehicle is designed with a logo that says One Tulsa. We believe that that vehicle is there for our officers. It increases the morale upon our department. It's something new for our citizens to see, and it's trend setting and hopefully helps us in our recruiting efforts. I've dedicated a supervisor to oversee the department's mental health initiatives. That's something that we did not have in place. We now have that in place. I've also ordered and we've launched reviews of internal policies to address immediate glaring needs. Some of those, the canine apprehension policy, some things that most people don't think about are uniform policy. We've done all this as our department and our community has gone through some serious events. One case that I think of is the unusual case of public interest with TJ and Miracle. We have gone through a pandemic, which still is a culprit of many a heartache here in our community and our nation, our world. The Tulsa Police Department has also gone through mass retirements as a result of legislative changes to the police pension system. Each of us witnessed the death of George Floyd and watched the planned peaceful protests here in Tulsa turn into civil disobedience. We had an unprecedented presidential and vice presidential visit to our city in the midst of an unbalanced set of circumstances within our city. We have dealt with the horrific murder of Sergeant Craig Johnson and the attempted murder of Officer Arash Zarkishan, the first time in nearly 24 years that a Tulsa police officer has died serving this community. When things possibly couldn't get any worse, an OHP officer goes down during an escort of our fallen officer to Oklahoma City. And now we deal with the McGirt decision and the jurisdictional chaos that's left in its wake. Things most people probably don't understand and have not fully grasped. Things that our department continues to, on a daily basis, find new gaps and loopholes in that decision. Nevertheless, the Tulsa Police Department continues to enjoy an overwhelming support from our community. We get respect from our community, and we know that our mission to protect and serve and our ability for our officers to faithfully and professionally advance that cause, even in the face of all the difficulties that's happened during this unsettled time, and we thank the community for that. In the last 4 weeks, Tulsa police officers have been involved in multiple incidents. Some you know about and others you don't. Many of the incidents involve edged weapons or knives, if you will. One event occurred on Friday night, August 21st, when an officer was struck by a vehicle as he pursued a man attempting to avoid arrest. On August 19th, officers were summoned to a call near 4300 East Pine involving an individual erratically wielding knives. That man refused to communicate, he refused to obey the commands of officers, and he eventually charged towards officers, causing them to deploy beanbag rounds and a barrage of pepper balls. They were successful in taking the man into custody after the use of less lethal options resulted in him dropping the knife. Less than 2 hours later, that same day, officers were summoned to 1700 Charles Page Boulevard, the scene of a man that was insistent on officers killing him. The man was in obvious mental distress and was in the roadway ready to challenge officers as they arrived. The man immediately jumped on an officer's vehicle and attacked that vehicle by stabbing the vehicle with his knife. An officer was able to deploy a taser, and that taser was successful in its deployment. And it separated the man from the knife, and he was able to be taken into custody and then later for mental evaluation. On August 9th, officers chased a wanted subject through an apartment complex after a lengthy pursuit near 2100 South 145th East Avenue. When he turned to one of the pursuing officers, he stopped and attempted to engage that officer and stab towards that officer. The officer was able to fight the individual away from him, and he was then tackled by another officer coming from a different angle. That officer did not see the knife in his hand. When the officer was made aware of the knife as they rolled on the ground struggling, that officer was able to create separation, and another officer was able to fire his weapon and stop the assault. That individual died from his gunshot wounds. That particular case is a case that is, again, one of those cases that is involved in the McGirt decision. Because of that, that case is a federal case now. And because it is a federal case, that does affect how we release video. Earlier that same day, officers answered several calls of a man acting erratically who was armed with a knife. The man committed a robbery using that knife at a local store just before officers encountered him at the Catholic Charities Transitional Housing Complex. Initially, the man cooperated with officers, providing his name and other information. He also confirmed to officers that he was in possession of a knife, but he refused to tell officers where that knife was on his person. After officers confirmed that he had a felony warrant for his arrest out of Wagner County, they advised him he was under arrest. The individual told the officers that he was not going back to jail. Eventually, officers deployed beanbag rounds and pepper ball at this individual. The man fought through the barrage of less lethal and aggressively addressed the officers with the knife. His actions led to multiple officers, 8 officers, firing a lot of rounds, more than 60. This officer involved shooting continues to be investigated. It is in keeping with our policy that we investigate that, and it is being investigated by the Tulsa Police Homicide Unit, and a separate internal affairs investigation will follow subsequent to the review of the Tulsa County District Attorney's investigation into this deadly force incident. We also will be reviewing the supervision that was out at that scene, as well as the command and control tactics involved in this incident, including how officers were staged and deployed, and the designation of officers who would be lethal and who would be less lethal in their assignments. I think a lot of you have asked, from the media, have asked about the slowdown in open records requests. I want to remind you all that we have civilians that are charged with doing those ORA requests, and they are on furlough and limited in their scope of the hours that they can work in a week. Again, the McGirt decision also is one that plays a factor into how we release information, but we continue to attempt to be as open and transparent as we possibly can in providing the information to the public. Our officers are going through unprecedented circumstances right now, and they are human. And there are things that officers may do on their on time that result to that factor into their work product. We will address those issues as they come up. All in all, we remain committed to providing professional service to the citizens of Tulsa. We are going to do what we have to ensure that professional service continues. And with that, I'm going to end the notes that I have, and I will open it up and take questions.
Chief, there's no question right now with the anti-police sentiment across the country. It's tough. Makes tough job you guys do even tougher. For you, being new in this position, how proud are you of your men and women for pushing through this and continuing to do your job every single day?
The men and women on the Tulsa Police Department have done a remarkable job through everything that's taken place, everything that I've mentioned. We have exhausted hours and hours on end as we dealt with protests. We exhausted hours and hours on end searching for 2 missing children. And I've got to remind you that those were back-to-back incidents that took place in the exact same individuals that were out searching the wooded areas, searching the river, are the same individuals that stood up and had to deal with the chaos that ensued after the George Floyd incident. So our people have done a remarkable job. And also we graduated an academy class. We started an academy class with 30 individuals, and remarkably 30 of them graduated. Through COVID, through the academy being suspended at times, through virtual learning, through the protests that disrupted their training as well, all 30 of them still stood up, raised their right hand, and swore an oath to this community, to protect this community. That's unheard of. Also with that, we have a number of individuals that will be joining the next academy class. All of those individuals that we brought on in what we call a pre-hire status, as they are on our department being paid in a civilian status waiting for the academy to start. All of those individuals that started months ago, and even with the delay in their academy starting, they continue to remain with us, and even during everything that's taken place, they continue to remain with us.
Chief, you were talking about the increase in homicides this year. Do you want to address the community on that? By our records, it's been the deadliest summer in quite some time. Is that just the ebb and flow, or do you think there's something going on?
Well, again, as I said before, I think that there is a phenomenon that's occurred that we just don't understand. We don't know. Our homicides are not of gang-related. They're all over the map. They're all over the board. Some of them are stabbings. But we have not pinpointed exactly why that's occurring. It could be that, again, people are in close proximity to one another on a more routine basis, and that in and of itself could be one of the reasons why our homicide rate is what it is. We do know this. We know that a large majority of our homicides occur and the victim and the suspect know each other. I don't know if we have one that is a stranger homicide.
You also mentioned assaults on CBD officers are up more than 40% from this time last year. Can you kind of explain some of those, not instances, but what constitutes an assault on an officer? Like as much as hitting an officer in any way, all the way up to shooting an officer?
Yeah, it can be anything from an officer being physically assaulted or punched by an individual, all the way up to the use of a weapon, a gun. It runs the gamut. But typically, our officers are reporting that they are being assaulted, and those assaults are enough that garner them to do paperwork to report it and make arrest on it. So I don't know the overall what crimes are if they are placed into court, if they're being bound over for trial or what. I don't have the numbers for that.
You mentioned the McGirt ruling as one of the things that have happened this summer. I guess, what are you guys doing as a department to handle that? I know a lot of different departments are, cross-deputizing their officers to try to deal with this. Is there any training you guys are doing, or how are you guys going about this to kind of push through?
Yeah, we have training going on through a multitude of different trainings going on. One is through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Another is cross-deputization through the Muskogee Creek Nation. Many of our officers already had those cross-deputization credentials, but those are still just small factors in it. There also has to be credentialing through the Federal Bureau of Investigation to be able to investigate some of the crimes. We have the state courts. We have municipal courts. Now we have federal courts and tribal courts now. All of that, now we have to make decisions and charging decisions based on all four of those different courts. That is to ask officers to do that out on the street is just it's something that takes time. All of our arrests are taking longer. And again, there's just this flood or backlog of the paperwork that comes along with that as we try and decide what paperwork gets pushed to which court.
Do you feel at times your hands are tied? Because I've talked to officers who say, they thought they had this good arrest, but they found out it was a tribal member. They couldn't do anything, and they kind of had to let them go, or it's kind of out of their. Do you feel like your hands are tied in a way, and going through this whole process of figuring this out?
I know that there is legislative action or legislators, federal legislators, are taking everything that we are dealing with and trying to get a grasp of everything that's taken place and trying to work out legislation that is going to address those issues. But until that's done, we are fighting a battle that is that's a moving target. And everything changes depending on who you talk to, when you talk to them, and what day of the week it is. So it is very confusing for our officers right now.
You mentioned how officers are human, just like us, and I think something we can relate to this year is morale and everybody's been kind of down. It's been a tough year. How are you keeping morale up within the police department when
we have a number of different systems in place to attempt to address our officer wellness. So we have what's called peer-to-peer, which are peers within the police department that individuals are able to go to and confide in. We also have what's called a crisis intervention team that comes out on any critical incident and provides services to our officers. We also have our first responder support group. It is a network of clinicians that we have that we pay money to, and they are the ones that are able to see officers and talk them through the what's going on personally, whether it's something in their personal life or whether it's something that's department related. There is that confidentiality there that resides with that group. So we have a number of platforms in place to help officers deal with that. All of our uniform divisions and most of the divisions have an area to work out in, if that is how one relieves stress. But we have been very vocal about the need for all of us to to take care of one another, to check up on one another. And again, even the person that's checking on the other needs somebody to check on them. And it's been a struggle for us.
Would you say that, you mentioned the community, would you say they've been helpful in keeping morale up?
Yeah, our community's been overwhelming. I think that the therapy that resided from everyone coming together after we lost an officer, that therapy of seeing the community support, seeing people with blue ribbons on their mailboxes, seeing people flying the American flag, and standing on the roadway, just on the sides of the road as the procession went through with Sergeant Johnson. That was therapy for a lot of officers. But with that, reality does sit back in, and again, it's tough. It's tough being a policeman.
How's the civilian in your office reviewing use of force going to change those investigations?
We're looking at different processes. So what process improvements can we make to our use of force, how we capture use of force data, also how that data flows through the network that we have in place. How can we make that quicker? How do we make that better? And how do we create audits to that to be able to better ensure that we're capturing everything that we need to?
First day you came into office, you were very open. You wanted transparency, you wanted community relationship, and that's the kind of what you've said since day one. How much more important is that now? You said it's tough to be a policeman right now. How much more important is to have that in these tough times?
Extremely important, because even though Tulsa dealt with some civil unrest, Tulsa did not deal with it on the level that all of these other cities did. And I think that is because of the relationship that we have with the community. I still think that the overwhelming majority of the community supports law enforcement in Tulsa and want to make sure that we have a safe community and want to give our officers everything that they need to make sure that that we have that safety in our community. So the investment of our community interaction reaps benefits when times are tough.
So you referenced the K-9 tool being used differently in practice, but policy was still to follow last time we chatted. Is that policy now final, the changes in how you use K-9s?
Yeah, that K-9 policy was, we worked on it for quite some time in the development. It went back and forth a number of different times. We sent the policy out for peer review. That policy is back in the hands of our CALEA group. And the CALEA group, I talked to them about 2 weeks ago, so I would imagine they told me in 3 weeks. So that would either be this week or next week that policy will actually come out and be our standard.
Last one, guys.
What's going on with the city's plan to address the homeless population on Archer?
You know, that's something I think that you need to talk to city government about, not the police department. Again, we are, we're fighting crime. There are people that go out and commit crime, and we will address that as that comes up. But the homeless issue, I would refer you to the city of Tulsa to deal with. Okay, thank you. I wanted to also, if you guys have additional questions about anything that I've talked about today, our domestic violence, our homicide, we have our experts here in the room that are happy to assist you. And I think we also have documents available for you to give you as well. Thank you.